Hello all, it's Game Methuselah. Well, I'm going to do something I haven't done before, and I'm going to try to make it as fast as I can because I really usually find these things boring. I'm going to do an unboxing for the fantasy trip. For those of you who don't know, and I'm sure if you've listened to me, you've heard me ramble on about it, I played a lot of the fantasy trip and I enjoyed it. It was a very simple and fast combat system that I thought was very evocative. The battles ran very quickly and they seemed very realistic to me. They were simple. It was easy to generate characters and I could then make up really exciting adventures. And this game system allowed me to do that a lot. Some of my most famous characters came out of this game. Some of the oldest stories and things you've heard about me talking have come out of this game. So I thought I have to do justice and let you know what I think on how to get started if you've never really played before, but you maybe followed my advice or you just saw it and said, gee, I'm going to check that out. It sounds interesting. So with no further ado, we shall discuss the fantasy trip. This is the box that it came in. It's a pretty good sized box. It is a two-piece setup box with some kind of white spot so the cat will chase it. It's SBS inside. It's full litho lamination. I was in the box business for 30 years. It's a nice way to store items. It's a good quality. Everything about this, I think the quality of printing is really good. The fun thing about getting a big box like this is the new game smell. When you open up a box game for the first time, you get that paper and print smell. It's more likely really toxic and you're going to die sooner because of it. But it smells really good for some reason to gamers. And my friends and I, get together, and when we open a new game, we all want to get the first whiff of the new game. And you're going to get that with this. There's a lot of little components in here. Now, I ponied up my own money for this. So in the grand tradition of Matt Coville, I don't want you to think that if I'm up here showing you something, it's because somebody gave it to me and said, hey, please talk about this. They didn't. The thing that started it all out was Melee. Steve Jackson produced this, and it was a folio game, a little plastic thing with the rules in it, kind of a pamphlet with a counter sheet. And the counter sheet represented the little characters and a paper map so you could push them around there and fight. And the map was a fixed scale, and the idea was you could do little man-to-man combats on your tabletop very easily. But Steve Jackson had a good reputation for making these little teeny mini games for a couple bucks. You could sit around a table with your friends and play a game, and they were fun. And he made quite a few of them, these little micro games, before he went on his own. Soon on the heels of it came out with this, Wizard. This was exactly the same thing, except instead of man-to-man combat, you have magic users who are battling with each other with their magical spells to defeat each other. Well, it didn't take me long to figure out, hey, wait a minute, I have man-to-man combat, I have magical combat. I can use this for role-playing. So I made my own little supplement that my friends and I used, but then they came out with a little thing that was pretty cool. It was called Death Test. Now, Death Test was basically a way that you could go into this little programmed adventure and run your characters against some death test. And if you survived, you got extra golden experience, your characters could get better. I think they came up with a Death Test 2, which is also included in this game, that came out after the Holy Grail. And that's when this came out, which was In the Labyrinth. Now, they came out with Advanced Melee, and they came out with Advanced Magic, and I know those came in the I Want It All edition. If I miss something, eventually I'll get, I'm sure, copies of both of those and utilize any special rules they might have had. That's what they did. They sort of cleaned up this game a bit. They got rid of a few things, and there's no point in me going over those. If you've never had it before and you've never played it before, well, this is it. Don't bother worrying about what wasn't there. As a game master, if you feel like dwarves should have some better skills with axes and maces, you can throw that in. You don't have to worry about that the rule doesn't tell you that happens. It's always up to you. And he even states that as a game master, when you're running a game, you should decide what you want to make your character. The nice thing they also did is they took advantage of the 20-some years of fan material that has been made. Because a lot of people like myself fell in love with this game and kept playing it and add other things that they thought would make the game more exciting and better. And a lot of them I liked. Some of them sort of stunk, but it's the nature of fan material. The neat thing is they included a lot of them, but they changed them up slightly, maybe simplified them, maybe just made them a little bit of their own. They're a little different, but they still bring the spirit of what the fans wanted to do. And I'm pretty pleased so far with everything I've read. Now, this is sort of a primer for everything. It has a random dungeon generator. It's got your character skills and your magical abilities and all the things you're going to need to generate your character in here. It's got a small bestiary, how to create magical items for people who wish to do that. And that should be an integral part of your game for the fantasy trip. But it's often really cool to be able to, if you have your characters create magical items, it gives you lots of reason to get gold. So the gold you find is beneficial because if your character can create potions or create magical items or whatever, you have some use for that items. And your fighters, who have accumulated all this gold and they're not out creating them, can buy these items from you so that you can accumulate wealth. And that's kind of nice. They give you a dungeon screen. It's pretty nice. Like most dungeon screens, you know, it has all the basic useful information the DM's going to need. It's got a little map of the local area map, which they also give you, and I'll show you that as we go. The nice thing I really liked about it is when you open up the screen all the way, you're going to see that the back of the screen has all sort of the basic pertinent information there. So on basically fighting and what options you do when you're battling, so that your players can read it when you are sitting here looking at the rules, and they don't have to ask you. It makes this screen kind of nice. They give you one of their dungeons, which they made, which I never quite understood even back in the 70s. I thought, are they trying to save on hex paper? I mean, they write this dungeon all on one page, and it's like 6 different levels, all color-coded, and it's confusing. They also give you a lot of blank stuff. They give you a little teeny cute character sheet, which I liked. They gave you the basic character sheet, which I kind of liked, except it's not 3x5. They made it a little fat. But I did find that, you know, an oversized 3x5 box, it does fit. So, you know, I would recommend this as your starting character sheet when you're playing, until it gets all ripped up and crunched in your box. On their sheet of cool stuff, this character sheet, it's huge. Why would you bother? Hey, I play Dungeons & Dragons. I can't live without a really monstrous character sheet. Well, there it is for you. They also give you on the inside these little, sort of what I would call half-size character sheets. They're a little bit better than this on the gear, even though I think a 3x card is great because you put your stats on the front and your junk on the back, and it works out really good. And then you draw really cool magical cards for all the really neat stuff, and you hook it on with a paper clip, and it works good. But these are not bad. This little size is good. If you have to have the big one, go ahead and use it. They give you, wow, blank hex paper. How fascinating. They also do something I like, which is they put all the sort of pertinent tables that are really constantly used, like your weapons and your gear and things in these. So I suggest you put them in a little plastic cover, and that way people, you know, can look through them. They also give you some pre-made warriors. They're dry erase, I think, or wet erase, or some kind of erase. They're laminated, and they give you some blank ones so you could make up your own. They give you an outdoor map in green, the one that you saw on the dungeon screen. They give you a village map in green. Those are also kind of nice. You know, this is worthwhile. And, you know, you don't need that much more here. They also have an adventure they give you. One of the one they made years ago, again with one of those glow-in-the-dark, dazzle patterned dungeons. But this was a actual adventure meant to be run by a DM. Now, I don't remember ever playing in it. I think Joe Elaine wanted to run it, and maybe he did. Maybe I wasn't there. Maybe I ran it and I fell asleep. I don't know. But here it is. So if you want to run your own adventure, there's one ready for you. So you don't have to use your brain to think up anything new. They give you a 14 hex dragon, which of course can be dead. These are kind of nice. Both Wizards and Melee have these little die-cut counters that fit onto the hexes or would fit onto a D&D square. And they have a little bit of art that represents either character or monster. And they're really nice. And on the back, they're a little skull and crossbones. So if a character gets killed, you flip it over and it shows you where the body is. Now, that's important in the fantasy trip because you have to either roll to move through a body hex to see if you stumble and fall, or you can spend 3 points of movement to do it safely. So the bodies, as they clutter up the place, become important in the game. The nice thing they also give, too, are a bunch of pre-cut out tiles in a neat little box to carry them around in. My guess is they're going to produce more in the future. So you'll be able to just sort of like quickly, sort of like dungeon tiles for hexes. basically punch them out and have them to put down and create a dungeon as you go. Kind of neat thing too is on one half they're blank. On the other half, they've actually got a little artwork on them. So if you want them with some interesting color, like here's like a little tower, and there's some dead bodies or pits or stairwells, or if you want rubble, you can have the basic one, and then when the roof falls in, you can flip it over, and then they've got the rubble there. But it's a nice little thing to have to get started with. And again, like I said, it gives you other options. But I'd say starting out, just to get the flavor of the game and sort of understand what we all did back in the day, it might be really nice to just start out and play with the hexes for a while, play through the pre-generated dungeon, and see how you like it, which is starting the game with Death Test. So, of course, not wanting to leave well enough alone, I made up little characters using the little sheet here, which have the character stats on the front and whatever peripheral gear they're carrying there. Now, I list their weapons and stuff here. Now, of course, when I do something, it's brilliant tactics. When you do something, it's cheesy. That's the way all miniature games play. If you've not played a lot of miniature games, it's always that way. But these characters are pretty basic. In playing Death Test, they tell you this is a very difficult module, and I haven't played it in like 30 some years, so I really don't remember anything of it other than it was pretty deadly. The nice thing for it is at the end, if you make it through, they give you a bunch of treasure and experience, and thusly your characters can actually start a campaign literally in that, as if somehow, instead of it just being a hiring drill, it could be some evil NPC who's carried the players and thrown them into this dungeon, the Death Test. And if they survive, they get their freedom and gold and experience, because he doesn't care. He just wants to see the carnage. And you could assume that all the nasty upper hierarchs get to pay gold, great money, to watch this carnage take place as his monsters and other bad guys sort of rip the heroes from limb to limb. But the thing from that is you would have characters that were no longer starting 32-point characters. When I normally start rolling fantasy trip campaigns, we normally start with characters that are at least 34 points. Sometimes 36, we've started characters where you really want the adventure just to boom, immediately be going. We'll even start with 40-point characters. But now when you want to play from the very beginning, this is it, the old 32-point character. But I see no reason not to add the attributes in. First thing I started with, as I showed you, was an archer. Now, the little archer is pretty basic. 10, 13, 9. His skills are sword, mace. He's got bow. He's got missile weapon at 3 levels. He has shield and climbing. And the reason I chose climbing as a little extra skill was I had an extra point. It was a 1-point skill. But the thing is, he has a good dexterity. And a climbing skill allows you to scale up more difficult pieces of terrain by making a dexterity roll. So the nice thing is that there's a piece of odd terrain that's maybe away from the ground harder for meleeers to get at him. He could sort of scramble up on his movement and then maybe have a higher area to shoot from, so he doesn't actually have to shoot through his friends, risk hitting them, and he gets to target the monsters maybe a little easier. Now, because of his missile skills, what he has here is the ability to fire this bow twice per turn. Now, it's not the greatest bow in the world, but twice a turn is pretty nice. He also has the sword knife, so he carries a little sword with him, and he has a large shield, which he keeps on his back, of course, when he's using his bow. But if he gets forced into melee, he can draw it around. He wears no armor, and you can see that's reflected here in his dexterity mods, one with the bow, one with the shield, which takes off his ability to attack, shows the weapons, shows how many hits he stops, either none or 2 with the shield. This is a pretty basic character. The other standard one I'm going to kind of show you is a mage. Now, this is a kind of fun mage that I really enjoy, especially a starter. He's got 10 strength, which often is pretty high for mages. A lot of times people get caught up in the idea of, ooh, we're going to make him really smart so I can use these really badass spells. Yeah, well, the problem with that is you're not going to have the strength to cast them. Now, I made him 10. I actually did a version of this with 9, which I kind of might have even liked better, which even gave him 1 more point of strength, or you could make him dexterity, because the dexterity determines how you get the spells off. But here are the list of spells. Basically, what this guy does is kind of cheat. Now, what he kind of cheats with is he has spells that's going to work on this really cheesy fighter I'm going to show you in a minute. But the main spell he has is fire. And fire is a very important spell. He has shadow, he has darkness, interesting low-level spells. The third character I really like. They really improve their unarmed combat skills. So I made Kwai Chang Caine, Shaolin Novice Priest. This is really nice. I like this character a lot. Not a lot of strength. I mean, if he gets knocked down, he gets knocked out. But it's got a decent dexterity and a decent IQ. He has literacy. I gave him priest, well, because I had to, but he's also a physiker, and a physiker is a really great ability for the game, because after the battle, he can heal 2 points on anybody who was injured in that fight. Now, he can't, next time there's a battle, he can't reheal those, but if they get new injuries, he can heal again. And can't heal during the battle, it's strictly an after the battle item. He also spent no money because he has unarmed combat, and they give you 1,000 silver pieces to start. So he spent all his money on buying some healing potions. Now, some of the other characters did too, the wizard did and the like. So those are ways to heal. Now, in the original game, you went down to below 0, you were dead. So a lot of us had to house rule it, because if not, pretty much 50% of the party would die every time you ran the game. So we gave them like a survival roll. And you roll your best stat. If you make it, you survive. If you didn't, now you're dead. And then we'll figure out what to do from there. Basically, what they do here is that after a battle, anybody who is dead, you get a chance to bring back. Now, you got to heal them up to 0. So kind of like the old D&D, your hits below dead count. So physical does 2 points of physicking. And then you say, oh, still 3 points away from 0. Let me put 3 points of healing into him. I'm up to 0. Bye-bye. He's not dead. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good way of representing living and dying, because obviously there'll be a lot more fatalities at low level because they're not going to be able to afford a lot of these 150 silver piece per point healing potions. But the thing is, when they go down, if they've invested in healing, if other people have invested in healing, you can get him back. And I think that is a pretty good way to do it. And it's a fun character. He's hard to hit. He takes a little reduction in damage, which is good because he has no armor. The nice thing about him is, because he's a Shaolin, he's got this mystical thing, which means he has a magical spell. Now, he had to pay 3 skill points to get it, but it's blur. Now, he gets into a fight, and if he can't kind of get around him, he can blur himself. And the unarmed combat skill gives him pretty good damage with bare hands. He does the same in hand-to-hand, and he's got this secondary thing, which they added, which is called kick. And for his case, because of his level 3, he can take a -1 penalty and kick for 2d -1. That's like a mace. This guy can whop a doodle on some monsters. Now, for the pièce de résistance, the cheese. Don't tell anybody. Please don't run this character. And if you do, please don't tell him Jim Murphy said for you to do this. The dumb brute. This guy's terrible. It's an awful character. You should never run it. He's got a 14 strength. He's really strong. He's got a 9 dexterity and a 9 IQ. So he's really actually not stupid. He has sword knife. He has toughness. I took it twice because he has a 14 strength and can take it 2 times. That means that his toughness 1 and 2 stops 2 points of damage. He has brawling. Now, the neat thing about brawling is it adds 1 point of damage to a barehanded fist attack. If you want to fight dirty, of course you want to fight dirty, you can do another point of damage, and then whoever you're fighting is going to realize you're trying to kill them. It's not what you would call a kosher fight anymore. The nice thing about that is, with his strength, he basically does the same amount of damage as a dagger with his bare hands, which is pretty effective. This guy takes advantage of the rules. If you look at it, 2-handed sword, dishes out a lot of damage. The other thing he has is plate armor. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. His effectively modified dexterity is 4. Try rolling a 4 or less on 3 dice. Yeah, it's not going to happen much. But here's the thing. A 5 or less is always an auto hit. 4 is a double damage crit. 3 is a triple damage hit. You're kind of getting where I'm going at this. Worse than that, he carries a heavy 2-handed weapon, which means he can do a thing called a sweeping blow. Sweeping blow means he attacks all 3 of his front hexes with his big honking weapon. That kind of uses it as a giant broom that has a blade on it and just sort of swings it in front of him, kind of figuring he's not going to hit anything because, frankly, he can't hit anything. Well, there's a -4 to hit with a sweeping blow, which means his effective dexterity now is nothing. But 5 still hits, 4 still crits, 3 still crits. I know it's cheesy. The funny part about this character is he works. The thing is, with the damage he stops, because of his 2 points of toughness and the plate armor, he stops 7 points of damage. That's the average roll on a 2d6 weapon, which is about as nasty as you're going to run into fairly early on in a game. Most of these things are not going to do that kind of damage, which means he's going to ignore 50% of the people who hit him with a broadsword. You know, let alone goblins or things like that, or anyone who shoots an arrow, like Archer who shoots a one-die weapon at him. Unless he crits, he does nothing to this guy. And if you do no damage, you cannot push him back. The secret of this character is really easy. He tries to engage as many of the bad guys as he can in his front to protect his other party members who can kind of get around on their rear and fight them. The wizard has shadow. The wizard also has fire. The wizard can throw a shadow kind of on him. Now, he's -6 to hit out of the shadow, but we already know his dexterity ain't getting any lower. So now he still only hits on an auto hit. But all attacks into his shadow are at -4. This dude is hard to hit. So you're out there with your 12 dex because you're thinking I'm all that. Now you're suddenly an 8 to hit him. And if you hit him, you more likely aren't going to damage him. And he's just sweeping and sweeping and sweeping in those front 3 spaces. Eventually he's going to roll a 5 or less, and he's going to crush somebody. But more importantly, he's got to stay there through the battle. Now, if it really gets ugly, Wizard can throw mass darkness through the whole area, which is -6 on everybody, except for you know who. Now, the problem is he has to be a little careful. That lousy dexterity means if he moves over half his movement, he risks falling, and he's going to fall. If he tries to leap over a body, he's going to fall. But you can use 3 points of safe movement to move over a body, so he's not in a hurry. He doesn't move fast anyway. He only moves 6. Hey, we'll get there. The thing he does the most is fill the gap. He is a big, nasty gap filler, and he really cheats out the rules. And you're going to hate him. Your DMs eventually say, you can't use, a Game Methuselah's stupid big thug because he breaks the game. And he doesn't really. You'll get tired of him early on. But he is effective. He is an effective barbarian. Now, someone's going to finally figure out that you throw a rope on him. He's susceptible to a lot of things. You throw a wizard throws a rope spell on him. You got to get your dexterity to get it off, and your dexterity immediately drops too. But I wanted to give you this for the people getting started in the game because he is pretty hilarious. And the nice thing about Death Test is it's for 4 characters. So basically, you and 3 of your friends should each make up a character and go in and play the game. And let the game run itself. It is a solo adventure, which was very popular in the 70s and 80s and stuff. Go do something that you find interesting yourself and read the rules and look for the combinations, because that's what's fun about the fantasy trip. It's the different combinations of characters that you make and all the different things, because fighters can use magic and magic users can use weapons and abilities and can do different things. And it makes for a really interesting game. Playing it, and I think it's fun. And I really love to live stream on this in the future and get some more Q&A. So hopefully down the road, I'll have that ability. But until then, keep playing and enjoy the game and have some fun with it. So until we have a chance to speak again, fight me, devils, fight, for I hate peace, and game on.